My parents kicked me out at 18 with nothing but a trash bag of clothes. 12 years later, at my brother's lavish wedding, they announced they were gifting him that same house. They thought I was powerless, but I brought a single document that would ruin their entire celebration. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The migraines had been blinding for 3 days, the kind that start at the base of your skull and wrap around your eyes like a vice made of hot iron. I was lying on my bathroom floor, the cold towel pressing against my cheek, trying to breathe through the nausea. It was the only place in my apartment that felt cool enough to stop the spinning. My phone, which I had tossed onto the bath mat, buzzed aggressively. The sound was like a drill in my ear. I didn't want to answer it. I was a senior partner at a real estate law firm, and usually a buzzing phone meant a crisis with a closing or a panicked client. But when the screen lit up, the name didn't belong to a client. It was Grandma Beatrice. Grandma never called in the middle of a workday, unless someone was dead or dying. I sat up, the room tilting dangerously, and swiped the green icon. Grandma! My voice sounded like gravel, rough from dehydration and lack of use over the last 48 hours of sickness. Holly, she said. Her voice wasn't frail. Grandma Beatrice was 82, but she had the spirit of a general leading a charge. But today, she sounded shaking. Not with fear, but with a rage so palpable I could almost feel the heat of it through the receiver. Holly, tell me you knew. Tell me you just didn't want to worry me. I rubbed my temple, trying to focus. Knew what? Grandma, I'm sick. I haven't left my apartment since Tuesday. What's going on? The silence on the other end was heavy, filled with the static of a bad connection and the sound of her sharp intake of breath. The wedding, she said, the words clipped. Jard's wedding. It's this Saturday, Holly. I blinked, the migraine pulsing behind my left eye. Saturday? No, that can't be right. Mom told me they were pushing it to next spring because Jard couldn't decide on a venue. I haven't even received a save the date. There is no next spring, Grandma hissed. It is this Saturday, at the country club, and that is not even the worst of it. I felt a cold pit open in my stomach, overriding the nausea. My brother Jard was the golden child, the prince who could do no wrong. I was the scapegoat, the one they erased. But to hide a wedding, to lie about the date. What could be worse than my own parents lying to ensure I miss my brother's wedding? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. I was at the rehearsal lunch today, Grandma said, her voice trembling with indignation. Your mother, Sylvia, she stood up to make a toast. She was bragging, Holly. Loudly. She told everyone that as a wedding gift, she and your father are giving Jard the house. The world stopped spinning, replaced by a sudden sharp clarity. The house, I whispered. My house. The house you grew up in. The house they threw you out of so they could turn your bedroom into Jard's gaming lounge. They are handing him the keys during the reception speeches. I closed my eyes. That house. The Victorian on Elm Street. It was the only place I had ever felt safe until the day I turned 18 and found my bags on the porch. It was the symbol of everything they had taken from me and everything they had given him. They can't do that, I said, my voice barely audible. They are doing it, Grandma snapped. Unless you come here, I told them if you aren't there, I'm not coming. And if I don't come, I'm pulling the funding for the honeymoon. I gripped the phone tighter. My head was pounding, my body was weak, and my heart felt like it had been carved out with a dull spoon. They were erasing me completely. They were taking the physical structure of my childhood, the place where I had cried myself to sleep wondering why I wasn't good enough, and handing it to the boy who had tormented me every day of my life. I'll be there, I said, the sickness in my stomach turning into something hard and cold. Good, Grandma said, because I need you to see this. I need you to see what they have become. I hung up the phone and laid back down on the cold tile, staring at the ceiling. Tears leaked from the corners of my eyes, hot and stinging. It wasn't just the exclusion. It wasn't just the favoritism. It was the sheer, unadulterated cruelty of it. They weren't just giving him a house, they were giving him my history. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. The next 24 hours were a blur of recovery and simmering fury. I forced myself to drink water, to eat toast, to shower the sickness off my skin. I needed to be sharp. I couldn't walk into that lion's den looking like a wounded animal. That was exactly what Sylvia would want. She thrived on my weakness. If I showed up pale and shaking, she would use it as proof that I was unstable. A narrative she had been spinning to the extended family for over a decade. My phone rang again the following afternoon. This time, the caller ID displayed Mother. I stared at it for a long moment. I was sitting at my dining table, surrounded by legal briefs for my upcoming cases, wearing a silk robe that cost more than the car I drove in college. I took a deep breath, composed my features as if she could see me, and answered. "Hello, Sylvia," I said. I hadn't called her Mom in years. "Holly," her voice was sugary, dripping with a fake sweetness that set my teeth on edge. It was the voice she used when she was performing for an audience. "I'm so glad I caught you. Grandma Beatrice mentioned she spoke to you." "She did," I replied, keeping my tone flat. "She mentioned the wedding is on Saturday. The one you told me was next spring." There was a pause, a slight hesitation where a normal person might feel shame. Sylvia just laughed, a tinkling, dismissive sound. "Oh, darling, you know how chaotic planning can be. We changed the date last minute to accommodate the venue, and honestly, with how busy you are with your little job, we didn't think you'd be able to make it. We didn't want to pressure you." My little job. I was a partner at one of the city's top firms. I made 3 times what my father made in his prime. But to Sylvia, unless I was a housewife married to a doctor, I was failing. "I can make it," I said. "Grandma said she wouldn't attend unless I was there." "Yes, well," Sylvia's tone sharpened, the sugar dissolving instantly. "She's being dramatic in her old age. But if you insist on coming, I suppose we can squeeze a chair in at the back. Table 19. It's near the kitchen, but it's the best we can do on such short notice." Table 19. The vendor table, probably, or the table for distant cousins everyone forgot. "That will be fine," I said. "And Holly," she added, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Jard is very stressed. This is his big day. His fiancée, Courtney, comes from a very prominent family. Do not make this about you. Do not wear anything flashy, and please try to control your jealousy. We're giving Jard a very significant gift, and I don't want you sulking in the corner." She meant the house. She was preemptively silencing me because she knew exactly how much it would hurt. She wanted to make sure I sat there, swallowed the insult, and watched them hand over my inheritance to the golden boy. "I wouldn't dream of ruining Jard's day," I said, and I meant it. I wasn't going to ruin it. I was going to redefine it. "Good," she said dismissively. "Wear beige or gray, something that blends in." She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there, listening to the disconnect tone, my hand trembling slightly. Not from sadness, but from adrenaline. I looked down at the paperwork spread out on my table. Among the client files and title searches, there was a manila envelope I had brought home from the office safe yesterday, right after Grandma called. I opened the envelope and slid out the thick, cream-colored document inside. It was embossed with the county seal. I ran my fingers over the text, the legal descriptions, the notary stamp dated just 7 days ago. Sylvia thought she was the queen of the chessboard. She thought she could move people around, discard pawns, and claim victory because she yelled the loudest. She thought that by keeping me off the guest list, she had kept me in the dark. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. You cannot give away what you do not own. I picked up my pen and underlined a specific clause in the document, a small smile touching my lips for the first time in days. They wanted me to sit in the back. Fine, I would sit in the back. They wanted me to blend in, I would be invisible. Until it was time to be the only thing they could see. To understand why this wedding was such a battlefield, you have to understand the war that preceded it. I was 18 when Robert, my father, walked into my bedroom and told me to start packing. It was 2 weeks after high school graduation. I had been accepted into a state university with a partial scholarship, but I still needed a place to live during the summers and a cosigner for my loans. "We need the space, Holly," he had said, not even looking me in the eye. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, who had spent his life hiding behind his wife's viciousness. He was the enabler, the silent partner in Sylvia's cruelty. "Jard needs a space for his streaming setup. He's going to be a professional gamer. It's a career now, you know." Jard was 15 then. He wasn't a professional anything. He was a C-average student who spent 12 hours a day screaming at a monitor and throwing controllers when he lost. "But where am I supposed to go?" I had asked, clutching a stack of textbooks I had just bought with my waitressing money. "You're an adult," Sylvia had chimed in from the doorway, leaning against the frame with a glass of wine in her hand. She was beautiful in a cold, preserved way, lots of Botox, expensive highlights, and eyes that assessed your net worth before your humanity. "Figure it out. We've supported you long enough. It's Jard's turn." So I left. I lived in my car for 3 months. I showered at the gym. I worked 3 jobs while putting myself through college and then law school. I didn't take a dime from them. In fact, on holidays, I was the one who brought the expensive wine, the one who tried to buy their love with gifts they barely glanced at. Jard, on the other hand, never left. He launched several failed businesses from that room: a t-shirt company, a crypto mining rig that hiked their electric bill by thousands, a podcast about hustle culture that had 4 listeners. He was 29 now, and his career was listed as lifestyle consultant on the wedding website. I knew what that meant. It meant unemployed and living off Sylvia and Robert's retirement fund. The antagonist of my life wasn't just bad luck. It was a specific, coordinated effort by my mother to elevate my brother by standing on my neck. Sylvia needed Jard to be special because he was an extension of her. I was just the competition. I arrived at the venue on Saturday morning, hours before the ceremony. The country club was exactly Sylvia's style: ostentatious, expensive, and desperate to look like old money. White roses covered every surface. A string quartet was setting up. I saw them from across the lawn. Sylvia was directing the florists, barking orders while Robert trailed behind her holding her purse. And there was Jard. He looked exactly as I expected: smug. He was wearing a tuxedo that clearly cost more than my first year of tuition, laughing with his groomsmen. He looked soft, unbothered by the struggles of the real world because he had never faced them. I watched as Sylvia walked up to him, adjusting his tie, looking at him with an adoration she had never, not once, shown me. She whispered something to him, and they both laughed, looking toward the parking lot where guests would soon arrive. "She's probably telling him how much money she saved by not inviting your friends," a voice said beside me. I turned to see Grandma Beatrice. She was sitting on a bench, gripping her cane with white-knuckled intensity. She looked regal in navy blue, but her eyes were tired. "Grandma," I said, sitting beside her and taking her hand, "you look beautiful." "I look like I'm attending a funeral," she grumbled, "which, in a way, I suppose I am, the funeral of their dignity." She squeezed my hand. "Did you bring it?" I patted the sleek, black leather tote bag resting at my feet. It was heavy, not with items, but with consequence. "I brought it." "Good," she said, her jaw tightening. "Jard came to see me yesterday. He asked if I was going to finally die soon so he could turn my cottage into an airbnb. He thought he was being funny." My blood ran cold. "He said that to you?" "He's a monster, Holly, made by 2 other monsters." She looked at the main house of the country club. "They think the house on Elm Street is theirs to give. Robert put the title in his name years ago to manage the taxes for me, but he forgot that the trust explicitly states I retain the right of revocation. And they forgot that I specialize in property law," I added softly. "They think you're a secretary, Holly. They never listened when you talked about your work." Grandma looked at me, her eyes fierce. "Today, they will listen." We watched as Sylvia spotted us. Her smile dropped instantly. She said something to Robert and then marched toward us across the grass, her heels sinking into the soft turf. "Here she comes," I whispered. "Let her come," Grandma said. "The trap is already set." Sylvia stopped 3 feet away, looking me up and down. I was wearing a charcoal gray dress, tailored to perfection, understated just as she asked. But the way I sat, legs crossed, chin up, it clearly annoyed her. "You're early," Sylvia said, no greeting. "And Beatrice, please don't start with the sour face. This is a joyous occasion." "It's a circus, Sylvia," Grandma replied. Sylvia rolled her eyes. She turned her gaze to me, her eyes narrowing as she looked at my bag. "I hope you didn't bring some. Cheap, sentimental gift to make a scene with. We have a registry, you know." "I didn't bring a gift for the registry," I said calmly. "I just brought some paperwork I needed to review. I won't be long." "Paperwork?" Sylvia scoffed. "Always trying to look important. Just try not to embarrass us today, Holly. That's all I ask." She turned on her heel and walked away, shouting at a waiter who was carrying a tray of champagne flutes. I watched her go, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. She had no idea. She was worrying about the color of the napkins and the placement of the orchestra, completely unaware that the ground beneath her feet had already crumbled. She thought I was here to embarrass them. I wasn't. I was here to evict them. The ceremony was a masterclass in performative fiction. I sat in the back row of the white folding chairs, just as I had been instructed, wedged between a distant cousin who chewed gum with her mouth open and a pillar that obstructed half my view. I watched my brother, Jard, stand at the altar, wiping away tears that I knew were more about the attention than the emotion. Courtney, his bride, looked stunning, but she also looked young, too young to understand the viper's nest she was marrying into. When the officiant began speaking about building a home and the sacred foundation of family, I felt a vibration in my purse. It wasn't my phone, it was the phantom weight of the folder inside. I didn't stay for the receiving line. While the rest of the guests flocked to the happy couple to offer congratulations, I slipped away toward the main building of the country club. I needed a quiet place to review the final pieces of my strategy. I found a secluded alcove near the library, a room smelling of lemon polish and old paper, and sat in a high-backed leather chair. I pulled the folder from my bag. This wasn't just about a deed. It was about a forensic dismantling of my parents' financial lie. I laid the documents out on the small mahogany table. The first was the original trust agreement Grandma Beatrice had signed 20 years ago. It was a standard revocable living trust, placing the Elm Street house under my father's management as the trustee. He had always paraded around as if he owned the place, telling neighbors about his property values, but he was merely a steward. The second document was the one I had prepared last week. I remembered the morning clearly. Grandma had come to my office, leaning heavily on her cane but with eyes clear as glass. "They're trying to sell it, Holly," she had told me then. I heard Robert on the phone. "They want to gift it to Jard, but the plan is for Jard to take a loan out against it immediately to pay off his gambling debts." That was the piece of the puzzle I hadn't realized until I dug into the public records. I pulled up the third document on my tablet now, a lien search. Jard wasn't just a lifestyle consultant, he was a gambler. He owed significant money to creditors. My parents weren't just giving him a house out of love, they were trying to use Grandma's asset to bail him out before he got his legs broken or his car repossessed. They were going to leverage the equity of the home I grew up in, the home Grandma built, to cover the tracks of their golden child's failures. But they had missed the revocation of trust clause. I looked at the timestamp on the digital filing I had executed 3 days ago, Thursday, 9:15 a.m., County Clerk's Office. Grandma had formally revoked the trust, stripping my father of his trustee status. Immediately after, she had executed a quitclaim deed, transferring the property at 42 Elm Street to a new owner, Holly V. Miller. I was the owner, I held the title. The house they were about to gift was legally mine. I took a sip of the sparkling water I had grabbed from the bar, the bubbles biting my tongue. I needed to be absolutely certain. I dialed my paralegal, Sarah, who was on standby despite it being a Saturday. "Holly," she answered on the first ring. "I'm looking at the registry right now." "Is it locked?" I asked, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. "It's locked, sealed, and delivered," Sarah confirmed. "The title transfer was recorded 48 hours ago. The electronic system is updated. If they try to file anything on Monday, it'll be rejected immediately. You are the sole owner of record." "And the liens." "I found 3 more judgments against Jard this morning," Sarah added, her voice dropping. "It's bad, Holly. He owes upwards of $80,000. If your parents had transferred that title to him, the creditors would have been on that house within a week. You didn't just save the house, you stopped a foreclosure." "They were going to sacrifice Grandma's legacy to pay for his poker habit," I whispered, the realization settling over me like a heavy blanket. "Does Grandma know about the gambling?" "I didn't tell her the extent," Sarah said, "but she knows enough. She knows they are reckless." "Thank you, Sarah. You're a lifesaver." "Go get him, boss." I hung up and stared at the papers. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was a rescue mission. My parents were willing to burn everything down to keep Jard warm. They were going to hand a $600,000 asset to a man who would lose it in a month. I organized the papers, the revocation, the deed, and the lien search. I clipped them together. This was my weapon. It was sharp, it was loaded, and it was time to walk into the line of fire. I stood up, smoothed the skirt of my dress, and checked my reflection in the dark window. The woman staring back wasn't the scared 18-year-old girl crying on the porch. She was a partner at Miller, Vance, and Associates. She was a shark, and she smelled blood in the water. The reception hall was a cavernous space draped in white chiffon and fairy lights. A swing band was playing a jazzy cover of a pop song, and the air smelled of roast beef and expensive perfume. I found table 19. As predicted, it was tucked behind a large decorative column, right next to the swinging doors of the kitchen. Every time a waiter burst out with a tray, a gust of garlic and steam hit me. I sat alone. The other seats at the table were empty, likely reserved for guests who had the good sense not to show up. I watched the head table. It was elevated on a platform like a throne room. Sylvia was holding court, laughing with her head thrown back, her hand resting possessively on Jard's shoulder. Robert was drinking scotch, looking red-faced and jovial. They looked like royalty. They looked untouchable. Then the music faded. The best man, one of Jard's gaming buddies who wore sunglasses indoors, mumbled through a speech about how Jard was a legend. Then it was time. Robert stood up and tapped a spoon against his glass. The room went silent. Sylvia stood next to him, beaming, clutching a microphone. "Thank you all for coming," Sylvia's voice boomed, amplified and echoing. "Today is about love, it's about family, and for Robert and me, it's about legacy." She paused for dramatic effect, looking out over the crowd. Her eyes scanned the room, skipping right over table 19. "We wanted to give Jard and Courtney a start in life that reflects how much they mean to us," Robert added, his speech slightly slurred. "We didn't want them to worry about rent or mortgages. We wanted them to have a home." A murmur went through the crowd. "So," Sylvia announced, her voice trembling with theatrical emotion, "we are officially gifting the newlyweds the keys to the family estate on Elm Street." The crowd gasped. Applause erupted. A projector screen lowered behind them, displaying a photo of the Victorian house. My house, Grandma's house. Sylvia reached under the table and pulled out a comically large, gold-painted cardboard key with a red ribbon. She handed it to Jard, who stood up and hugged her, wiping his eyes. It was a perfect moment, a perfect lie. I didn't shout, I didn't flip a table. I simply stood up, picked up my black leather bag, and walked. I walked past the kitchen doors. I walked past the tables of aunts and uncles who hadn't spoken to me in years. I walked straight toward the head table. The applause was dying down as people returned to their salads, but a few people noticed me approaching. Sylvia saw me first. Her smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second, before turning into a glare. She stepped down from the platform to intercept me before I could reach the microphone or the bride. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed, grabbing my upper arm, her nails dug into my skin. "Sit down, now." Robert was right behind her, looking annoyed. "Holly, for God's sake, don't make a scene, not now." "I'm not making a scene," I said, my voice calm, contrasting sharply with their frantic whispering. "I just wanted to congratulate you on such a generous gesture. It's very noble." Sylvia blinked, surprised by my tone. She loosened her grip slightly. "Well, yes, it is. We take care of our family, Holly. Maybe if you had been more grateful, things would be different for you." "That's the thing, Sylvia," I said, loud enough that the bridesmaids at the nearby table turned to look. "It's easy to be generous with things that don't belong to you." Sylvia's face hardened. "Excuse me." "The house," I said, smiling politely. "You can't give it to Jard." "Don't start this jealousy routine," Robert snapped. "I bought that house 30 years ago. I can do whatever the hell I want with it." "Actually, you didn't buy it, Dad. Grandma did, and she put it in a trust." "I am the trustee," Robert barked, his face turning a deeper shade of crimson. "I have full power of attorney." "Had," I corrected, past tense. Sylvia stepped in, positioning her body to block me from the view of the main room. "You are drunk," she spat. "You are jealous and bitter, and you are trying to ruin your brother's moment because you can't stand that he is happy and you are alone. Go back to your table or leave." "I'm not drunk, Mother, and I'm not jealous." I opened my bag and pulled out the folder. "I'm a lawyer, and I'm telling you that you just publicly committed fraud." Sylvia laughed, a sharp B. "Riddle sound. Fraud, don't be ridiculous. You think waving some papers around scares us? We know the law." "Do you?" I asked. "Because if you knew the law, you'd know that Grandma Beatrice revoked your trust on Thursday morning." The color drained from Robert's face instantly. Sylvia, however, doubled down. "She's lying, Robert," Sylvia said, her voice rising in pitch. "She's bluffing. Beatrice is senile. She doesn't even know what day it is. Holly forged whatever that is." "Is that what you're going with?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Forgy, in front of witnesses." "Get out," Sylvia seethed, pointing a shaking finger at the exit. "Get out before I have security drag you out." "I'll leave," I said, "but not before I give the groom his real wedding present." I looked past them. Jard was watching us, holding his giant cardboard key, looking confused. He started walking over, sensing the tension. "What's going on?" Jard asked, adjusting his expensive tie. "Holly, why are you harassing Mom?" "She's leaving," Sylvia said quickly, trying to steer Jard away. "She's not feeling well." "I'm feeling great, actually," I said, stepping around Sylvia. "I just wanted to let you know, Jard, you might want to return that giant key. It doesn't open anything." "What are you talking about?" Jard asked, his lip curling in that familiar sneer he had perfected in childhood. "You're just mad because you didn't get a cut, right? Always about the money with you." "It's not about the money, Jard. It's about the debt," I said, dropping the volume of my voice so only the family circle could hear. "The $80,000 in gambling debt you're trying to hide from your new wife." Jard froze. His eyes darted to Courtney, who was still sitting at the head table, oblivious, taking a selfie with her champagne. "You shut your mouth," Jard hissed, stepping into my personal space. He was taller than me, and he used to use that size to intimidate me when we were kids. He'd loom over me until I flinched. I didn't flinch today. "I ran a lien search, Jard," I said, holding his gaze. "I know about the creditors. I know about the final notices. And I know the plan was to take a home equity loan on the Elm Street house by Monday morning to pay them off." Sylvia gasped. She turned to Robert. "You said it was for his business startup." So even Sylvia didn't know the full extent. Robert had lied to her too. The toxicity in this family was like a nesting doll, layers upon layers of deception. It doesn't matter, Robert interjected, wiping sweat from his forehead. The house is ours. We dealt with the bank. The transfer is already in motion. The transfer will be rejected, I said calmly. I pulled the first document from the clip, the recorded deed. Because as of Thursday at 9:15 a.m., the property at 42 Elm Street belongs to me. I held the paper up. The official county seal was visible, the embossed stamp catching the light of the chandelier. Robert snatched the paper from my hand. His eyes scanned the lines frantically. His hands began to shake. This is impossible. Beatrice couldn't, she wouldn't. She did, I said. She was tired of watching you spend her legacy on Jard's mistakes. She transferred the title to me. I own the house, Dad, me, the daughter you kicked out. You manipulated her, Sylvia shrieked, her composure finally shattering. She grabbed Robert's arm. She tricked an old woman. This is elder abuse. We'll sue you. We'll have you disbarred. Grandma is of sound mind, I replied, my voice hard as steel. I have the affidavit from her doctor, signed the same day. I have the video recording of the signing. I have everything. There is not a single loophole you can crawl through. You can't do this to us, Jard whined, his voice cracking. He sounded like a child again. I promised Courtney. I promised her we had a place. We gave up our apartment lease. You gave up your lease, I asked, a dark amusement bubbling up. That was unwise. Fix this, Sylvia screamed at Robert, slapping his arm. Fix this, Robert. Tell her she's wrong. Robert looked up from the paper, his face gray. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. He saw the cold resolve in my eyes. He realized then that the power dynamic had shifted permanently. It looks legal, Sylvia. It's recorded. No, Sylvia yelled. I don't care what that paper says. That is my house. I decorated it. I lived there for 30 years. You lived there rent-free courtesy of Grandma, I said. And now you have a new landlord. You wouldn't, Robert whispered. I'm giving you 30 days to vacate, I said, my voice projecting clearly now. You and Jard's boxes of junk and whatever else you have hoarded in there. 30 days, or I file for eviction. You ungrateful little bitch, Sylvia lunged at me. It happened in slow motion. Sylvia, in her mother-of-the-groom gown, raised her hand to SL. At me, it was a move she had used 1,000 times when I was a teenager. But I wasn't a teenager anymore. I caught her wrist in midair. I didn't squeeze, I didn't twist. I just held it there, firm and immovable. Don't, I said. The room had gone silent. The argument had escalated enough that the music had stopped. The bride was standing up. The guests at the nearby tables were staring, mouths open. Sylvia stared at her captured wrist, then at my face. She tried to yank her hand back, but I held it for a second longer, letting the humiliation sink in before releasing her. She stumbled back into Robert. Grandma isn't coming today, I announced, addressing my parents but loud enough for the room. She stayed home because she couldn't bear to watch you lie to these people. She wanted me to give you this message. The Bank of Beatrice is closed. I reached into my bag one last time and pulled out a small, velvet box. I tossed it onto the table in front of Jard. It bounced and landed next to the fake cardboard key. What is that? Jard asked, trembling. My wedding gift, I said. It's a list of bankruptcy attorneys. You're going to need one. I turned my back on them. I could hear Sylvia sputtering, could hear Robert groaning, could hear the confused murmurs of the guests. But then, a voice cut through the chaos. Wait. It was Courtney, the bride. She had walked down from the head table. She looked from Jard to the cardboard key to the legal papers in Robert's hand. She wasn't looking at me with anger. She was looking at me with horror. Is it true? She asked me, her voice shaking. Does he really owe $80,000? I stopped and looked at her. She was innocent in this, just another victim of their charm offensive. Ask him to show you his credit report, Courtney, I said softly. Before you sign the marriage license, ask him. I walked toward the exit. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The explosion had happened, and the shockwave was just beginning to tear them apart. I had made it to the double doors of the ballroom, my hand pressing against the cool brass handle, when the silence behind me fractured. It wasn't the sound of Sylvia screaming this time, nor Robert blustering. It was a sound far more devastating to their carefully curated image, the sound of a bride sobbing. "No," Courtney's voice rang out, shrill and panicked. "No, Jard, let me see it. If it's not true, just log in." I paused. My instinct, the survival mechanism I had honed for 12 years, screamed at me to push through the doors, get to my car, and drive until the reception was a speck in my rearview mirror. I had dropped the bomb. I didn't need to watch the explosion. But then I heard Sylvia. "She's ruined it," Sylvia was shrieking, her voice projecting to the back of the room without the aid of a microphone. "My daughter is mentally unstable. She's always been jealous of Jard. Listen to me, everyone. She forged those papers. She's sick." I stopped. My grip on the door handle tightened until my knuckles turned white. They could steal my childhood home. They could steal my college fund. They could steal my place in the family photos, but I would be damned if I let them steal my professional reputation. I was a partner at a major law firm. If I walked out now, leaving the room with the impression that I was a mentally unstable forger, Sylvia would spend the next decade poisoning my name in this town. I turned around. The scene was chaotic. Jard was trying to wrestle his phone away from Courtney. Robert was chugging his scotch as if it were water. Sylvia was standing on the steps of the head table, arms wide, addressing the confused crowd like a preacher trying to control a riot. "Please," Sylvia yelled, forcing a manic smile. "Ignore her. Holly has had episodes. Since she was a teenager, we've tried to get her help. This is just another cry for attention. The house is ours. Jard's gift is real. DJ, play the music. Everyone dance." The DJ, a terrified-looking kid who couldn't have been older than 20, looked from Sylvia to the silent crowd. He didn't press play. I walked back into the room. I didn't run. I walked with the slow, deliberate cadence of a lawyer entering a courtroom for closing arguments. The clicking of my heels on the parquet floor seemed to echo in the silence. "That is a lie," I said. My voice wasn't shouting, but it carried. I projected from the diaphragm, a trick I learned in my first year of litigation. Sylvia froze, her eyes widening as she saw me returning. "Get her out of here," she screamed at the groomsmen. "Get her out." One of the groomsmen, a burly guy named Mike, who I vaguely remembered from Jard's high school days, took a hesitant step toward me. "Mike," I said, locking eyes with him, "touch me, and I will have you arrested for assault before the cake is cut. I am a licensed attorney in this state. Do you really want to catch a charge for Jer?" "D." Mike stopped dead in his tracks. He looked at Jard, then back at me, and took a step back, raising his hands in surrender. I continued walking until I was standing right in front of the head table again. I didn't look at my parents. I looked at the older couple sitting on the other side of the bridal party, Courtney's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Sterling. I recognized them from the society pages. He was a serious investment banker, the kind of man who didn't tolerate risk or fraud. "Mr. Sterling," I said, addressing him directly, "my mother is claiming I am mentally unstable and that I forged a government document. That is a serious accusation. Since your family is apparently merging their finances with my brother today, I think you deserve the truth." Mr. Sterling stood up. He was a small man, but he had a gravity to him that silenced the room. "I'm listening," he said, his voice dry and cold. "Daddy, don't listen to her," Courtney wailed, tears streaming down her face, mascara running in dark streaks. She was clutching Jard's phone, which was locked. "Jard won't unlock it. He won't show me his banking app." "It's private," Jard shouted, his face patchy and red. "A husband is allowed to have privacy. You're being crazy." "Privacy involves texts, Jard," I said calmly. "Not $80,000 of debt when you're about to sign a mortgage." I turned back to Mr. Sterling. "The house at 42 Elm Street is legally mine. Grandma Beatrice transferred it to prevent exactly what is happening now. My parents have no assets to give. They mortgaged their own home 3 times to pay for this wedding to impress you." A collective gasp went through the room. Sylvia looked like she was choking. "That is a lie," Robert roared, slamming his empty glass on the table. It shattered, sending shards of glass into the floral centerpiece. "We are solvent. We are wealthy." "Then why did Grandma Beatrice pay for the catering deposit?" I asked. "I have the receipt in my bag. Why did you ask Uncle Mark for a loan last week?" I saw the email thread. I was bluffing about the email thread, but I knew my father. He always asked for money when he was cornered. Robert's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The bluff landed. Mr. Sterling looked at Robert, his expression shifting from confusion to disgust. He then turned to his daughter. "Courtney, give me the phone." "No," Jard yelled, trying to grab it back. "You can't do this. This is my wedding." Mr. Sterling didn't shout. He just walked around the table, grabbed Jard by the lapels of his expensive tuxedo, and shoved him backward into his chair. It was a shocking display of physical dominance from a man in his 60s. "Unlock the phone, son," Mr. Sterling said, his voice dangerously low. "Or I will hire a team of forensic accountants to tear your life apart by Monday morning. If you have nothing to hide, unlock it." Jard trembled. He looked at Sylvia for help, but she was staring at the floor, defeated. He looked at the guests who were filming with their phones. He looked at me, hate burning in his eyes. With a shaking hand, he took the phone from Courtney, punched in the code, and handed it to her father. Mr. Sterling scrolled. The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. He scrolled for a long time, then he stopped. He looked at the screen, then at Jard. "Sports betting," Mr. Sterling said, reading aloud. "Crypto leverage, online poker." He looked up. "You are negative $84,000 across 4 credit cards, and there is a pending application for a high-interest payday loan." Courtney let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She ripped the veil from her head and threw it on the floor. "You told me you were an investor," she screamed at Jard. "You told me the house was paid for. You told me we were safe." "We were going to be," Jard pleaded, reaching for her hand. "Once Mom gave me the deed, I was going to fix it. I just needed a little time. It was an investment strategy." "It was fraud," Mr. Sterling barked. He turned to his wife. "Get the car, we're leaving." "Courtney, wait," Sylvia rushed forward, grabbing the bride's arm. "We can fix this. We can pay it off. Robert has a pension." "Get your hands off my daughter," Mrs. Sterling hissed, stepping in between them. "You people are vipers. You lied to us for a year. You let us pay for the honeymoon, the dress, the open bar, all while you were plotting to bankrupt her." We just wanted them to be happy," Sylvia stammered, tears finally falling, but they were tears of self-pity, not remorse. "You wanted a bailout," I corrected from the floor. Mrs. Sterling looked at me. She nodded, a sharp, respectful acknowledgement. "Thank you," she said. "You saved her life." "Courtney, please." Jard was on his knees now, crying, snot running down his face. "I love you, don't go." Courtney looked down at him. She looked at the man she had promised tea. O spent her life with 5 hours ago. Then she looked at the cardboard key, still sitting on the table. "I'm annulled," she said coldly. She turned and walked out, her parents flanking her like bodyguards. The room erupted. The spell was broken. Guests started standing up, grabbing their purses, whispering frantically. The illusion of the perfect family had been shattered into a million pieces, and I was standing in the center of the debris. Sylvia collapsed into her chair, burying her face in her hands. Robert poured himself another drink from a bottle he had grabbed from a passing waiter, ignoring the chaos. Jard stayed on his knees, sobbing into the tablecloth. I looked at them one last time. I felt no joy. I felt no triumph. I just felt a profound, exhausting relief. The weight of being the scapegoat, the carrier of their secrets, was finally gone. I turned to the guests, to the aunts and cousins who had ignored me all night. "Enjoy the cake," I said. "I hear it was very expensive." And then, finally, I walked out. 30 days later, the moving truck idled in the driveway of 42 Elm Street. It wasn't a sad day. The autumn air was crisp, smelling of dried leaves and wood smoke. I stood on the sidewalk, holding a cup of coffee, watching the movers haul the last of the boxes out of the house. They weren't my boxes. Sylvia and Robert had tried to fight the eviction, of course. Robert had threatened to sue, claiming squatters' rights, which was laughable given that I was the title holder. Sylvia had tried emotional blackmail, sending me long, rambling text messages about how I was destroying the family and how God would punish me. I didn't block them. I just forwarded the messages to my attorney, who attached them to the eviction filing. In the end, they folded. They had no money for a legal battle. The wedding had drained their liquid savings, and with Mr. Sterling threatening to sue them for the costs of the reception, they were scrambling to liquidate assets just to stay afloat. I watched as Jared's gaming chair, a neon green monstrosity, was carried out. It was scuffed and torn. Jared wasn't there. He was living on a friend's couch in the next town over, dodging process servers. The annulment was finalized in record time, thanks to the fraud. Courtney had sent me a thank you card and a bottle of vintage wine last week. She was already dating someone else, a dermatologist. She was going to be fine. "Is that the last of it?" a voice asked behind me. I turned to see Grandma Beatrice. She looked younger than she had in years. The stress lines around her mouth had softened. She was wearing a bright yellow cardigan and leaning lightly on her cane. "That's the last of it," I confirmed. "The house is empty." "It's not empty," Grandma corrected, smiling. "It's clean. There's a difference." We walked up the path together. The porch needed painting, and the garden was overgrown with weeds, evidence of my parents' neglect over the last few years. But the structure was sound. The bones were good. I unlocked the front door with my key, the real key, not a cardboard prop. The house echoed as we stepped inside. The living room, stripped of Sylvia's gaudy, oversized furniture, looked massive. The sunlight streamed through the bay windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. "It smells like them," I murmured, wrinkling my nose. A faint scent of Robert's cigars and Sylvia's cloying perfume lingered. "We'll paint," Grandma said decisively, "and we'll open the windows. A good stiff breeze will clear that out in an hour." She walked to the center of the room and looked around. "I built this house with your grandfather in 1975, she said softly. "We wanted it to be a place of safety, a sanctuary. When I let Robert take over, I thought I was keeping it in the family. I didn't realize I was feeding a parasite." She turned to me, her eyes wet. "I am so sorry, Holly. I should have stepped in sooner. I should have stopped them when you were 18. "You're here now, Grandma," I said, putting my arm around her. "You saved me." "No, darling," she shook her head. "You saved yourself. You became the woman they could never be, honest, hardworking, strong." We walked through the house, room by room. We planned the renovations. We would turn the dining room into a library. We would tear up the old carpet. And my old bedroom, the one Jared had occupied for 12 years, we would gut it completely. I planned to turn it into a home office for my firm. I would practice law in the very room where I used to cry over my homework. "What about them?" I asked as we stood in the kitchen. "Do you know where they went?" "They rented a 2-bedroom apartment near the highway," Grandma said, her tone devoid of pity. "It's small, no dishwasher, no yard. Robert had to go back to work. He took a job as a consultant for a mid-tier firm." "Sylvia?" "Well, Sylvia is finding out that without a big house and a successful son to brag about, her friends aren't very interested in her phone calls." "It sounds lonely," I said. "It is," Grandma agreed, "but it is the life they built, brick by brick." We went out to the back porch and sat on the steps, just watching the leaves fall in the backyard. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to prove anything. I didn't need to earn my spot. I didn't need to fight for resources. I had my career, I had my dignity. I had the person who truly loved me, and now I had my home back. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Sylvia. I glanced at the preview. Holly, please, the apartment smells like smoke. Can we just come over for dinner? We can talk about this. I looked at the text. I thought about the 18-year-old girl with the trash bag of clothes, begging to stay, begging to be loved, and being told no. I tapped the screen, selected block contact, and slipped the phone back into my pocket. "Who was that?" Grandma asked. "Nobody," I smiled, leaning my head on her shoulder. "Just a wrong number." Grandma squeezed my hand. We sat there in the quiet, claiming the silence, claiming the peace, claiming the future. The house was finally, truly ours.